listening to Mondays with Mike Martinez.
Hey guys, welcome back to Mondays with Mike. I have a very, very special guest today. My new found friend, Abel with Abel's Bailbonds. How you doing, Abel?
How's it going?
It's good to see you, man. Thank you,
Mike, for having us.
For coming all the way out from San Diego. I appreciate you making the drive over here to spend some time with us and to deliver some serious value to our audience. Let's talk a little bit about yourself, your name, your business, where you're located. How long have you been in business?
You know, I've been in business for about 10 years. I went ahead and started as a individual sole proprietor, one-man shop. I got a lot of experience working for multiple agencies, trying to go ahead and see what the flaws were, right, versus the pros. And it kind of snowballed from there. I started off as a young 19-year-old bounty hunter working for cash under the table. And, you know, like I tell everybody, and I think I mentioned this to you before, it's all fun and games until you start getting shot at, right? I am a family man myself. So what I did is I went ahead and I learned the desk job, right? How to help people out versus capturing them, right? Instead of helping out the insurance company and the bail agencies capturing and apprehending fugitives, I says, you know, let me try my luck at going ahead and making sure that I can help those in need at 3 a.m., right? When they need someone they can trust with knowledgeable experience in the industry. And it rolled from there. I did very well.
Bail bonds is crazy. For those that are watching that really don't know what the bail bonds is, if I was a kindergartner, how would you explain what bail bonds is and what it does?
It's very simple. If you ever were to get in trouble, we're the guys that go ahead and get you out of trouble, right? If you were to go ahead and go to jail, right, for a crime that, you know, you did not know you committed, but you involuntarily committed. Well, that's where we come in, right? And I always say this, not everybody that goes to jail is going to be an innocent person, but there are a lot of innocent people out there that need help, right? I had a client the other day that got arrested for, you know, he was coming back from the gun range, had his gun not properly secured in the vehicle, did a traffic violation, got pulled over, and he got arrested for not having the gun in the proper condition it should be. Went to jail for a $50,000 bond. And what that means is if you want to get out of jail for a crime you committed, somebody needs to give you either yourself through a cash bond that you can pay to the jail. You take out $50,000, which, let's face it, in this economy, who has $50,000 lying around? So what I do is I become a loan officer in that sense, right? I mediate and negotiate between yourself, the defendant, and the Department of Insurance. It's all insurance money, right? It's a common misconception, and you can ask any other bail bondsman around, and they don't know how to explain it like I do.
So but bond is an insurance.
A bond is basically a check, right? That bonds you to that client that takes that you basically assume liability over habeas corpus, making sure the body goes back to court. If for any reason at all, this client decides to not go to court because they were drinking and partying the next day and forgot to go to court, or let's say it's somebody that just got nervous and says, you know what, I'm afraid of the sentencing that's going to happen. I'm not going to go to court. What a bail bondsman does is they assume liability. That $50,000 that I spoke to, that I approved you for and negotiated with the underwriters, got you that loan. If that $50,000 is not exonerated, right, meaning the person goes back to court and their case is done and over with, that $50,000 gets held by the court until the bail bondsman goes ahead and captures and apprehends that fugitive and brings them back. At that point, you're considered a fugitive, right? Very tough term to go ahead and come to terms with, right? Being called a fugitive, but it's very true. You get a warrant that's issued in your name, and until that bail bondsman that basically bonded you out and became bonded to you brings you back, those $50,000 gets held. And if for any reason at all that bail bondsman does not find that client within a certain amount of time, that money is now taken from the bail bondsman's account. So we essentially have a giant buildup fund. We call it a buff, right? It's held in trust. And if for any reason somebody runs, then that money gets taken from there.
How do you make money? So from the $50,000 bond that they need to put up, that you end up essentially putting up to get them out of jail, how much money does your client that you're bailing out need to pay you? How does that work?
So it's very simple. The state of California mandates that we charge 10% for taking on all that risk, right? So if you go ahead and get arrested for a $50,000 bail, it's $5,000 to get out. But that's where the other side of the coin comes in, right? A lot of people get confused with it. They say, well, I don't have $5,000 in this economy. Even that is tough, right? So the bail bondsman goes ahead and gets you approved by negotiating with the underwriters, making sure that if this guy doesn't have 10%, I'm going to assess where he was born, right? What does he do for work? Make sure that I can find him and apprehend him. But we go as little as 0% down, 1%, right? And we put you on a payment plan, which, you know, if later on you decide, okay, well, usually I'm pretty good at getting people 3 options, right? So I'll negotiate with the underwriters to say, look, you can either, they said that you can either pay it in full and they'll avoid co-signers, no collateral, no ankle monitor, none of that stuff, which is a $5,000, or depending on what I qualified them for, if they're military, the paid in full starts at a 20% rebate. So $4,000. Look, if you pay the $4,000, they'll let you go ahead. They'll give you the $50,000 loan. No ankle monitor, no collateral, none of that stuff. Very nonchalant, straightforward.
So it's the insurance company that it has to approve the payments?
Correct. So the insurance, it's the underwriters that you negotiate with, right? So a lot of times, and it varies for a lot of bail bond agencies, right? A lot of the big time ones, they like to go ahead and do it old school. They have enough capital in there where they can go ahead and charge you whatever. And those are the ones you got to really look out for. The mom and pop shops, they're the ones that are really the advocate for you, right? Because they go ahead and they fight for you. As long as they make sure that you can go ahead and take care of your business, make it realistic, right? I'm not going to go ahead and if I see somebody that, you know, I take down their monthly gross, right? Let's say they're working at their fast food, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, something like that. They can't afford a payment plan of $1,000 every other 2 weeks. So we say, look, I was able to go ahead and negotiate with the Department of Insurance. They said they'd give you a 50% rebate, which comes out to 5%, right? Instead of paying the full $5,000, they're only going to charge you $2,500, but they're going to put you on a payment plan for that $2,500, right? You might need some co-signers, right? Mom and dad might have to go ahead and sign for you. And
that's where that.
Yeah.
So how do you make money and how does the insurance company make money?
So the insurance company, out of that whole percentage that we go ahead and charge, everybody thinks it's just a bail bondsman that goes ahead and gets the full cut. It's not true. There's a percentage that goes to the Department of Insurance. There's a percentage that goes into your build-up account, right? So that in case every time you bail somebody out, if they were to run, you're able to go ahead and have enough funds in there to cover that amount. And it just gets itemized from there, from the Department of Insurance. And we get a certain percentage of that.
So from the 10% that somebody needs to pay a client to get bailed out of the bond, everybody's getting a piece of that.
Everybody gets, exactly.
The bail's agent.
It gets diluted, right? Okay. Sometimes even the court goes ahead and adds their own fees into it. Wow. Right? Yeah, and it's very tough when it becomes it's called a forfeiture. It's when somebody goes ahead and they get a warrant, right? And there's even to just get the bond exonerated, they don't come back or anything like that. There's fees that get accumulated that the bail bondsman has to pay out of his own pocket. So that's where the build-up fund comes in, right? We have money to go ahead and dish out, make sure that the courts are taken care of, because if not, the courts can in return charge us the full amount of the $50,000 just by forfeiting contract.
This is really good information. I think this is going to help people really understand how bail agents work, and that, you know, from the 10% of their bond, like everybody's, you know, eating off of that per se, right? Everybody is getting their cut in order to do the job.
Right.
So pardon my language, but this is some crazy shit.
Oh, no, it is. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that when you asked me to come onto the show, I jumped at the occasion, because I says, you know, this is a good opportunity for me to really show people what it is that we do, a back scenes look at everything, right? And I tell every client that, look, you can go to any other bail agency around. They're trained the same way. And that's another factor as to why I stand out over everybody else, right? Everybody has a cookie cutter method. My way, and it's worked for me completely 100% of the time, as long as you're able to do good, clean business, explain things the way they are, and make sure that the client knows why they're paying that money, right? And what you did to get them approved, you're never going to go wrong. And that's why I have such a low rate of people that go ahead. Actually, I don't have anybody right now. My company right now is on liability. It's worth about, easily, I think it's in the billions, right? Just running around. People that we've bailed out, and none of them run on us. We have 0 forfeitures, and it's impressive to the Department of Insurance. It's attractive to them because they say, well, this guy's loaning out money, right? And nobody's running on him. Why? Because we make it reasonable for the person to go ahead and get out. We make it obtainable, right? And we don't scare them with all these things of, you know, if you don't go back to court, Dog the bounty hunter is going to come after you. No, look, it's not like that, right? If you don't go back to court, I tell people, you know, I get a partier, right? The other day I got this guy out, this kid out. Parents called us. We're right at one of our East County locations. It's a brick and mortar that we have. It's right next to a famous pub. And the family goes there, and we do a lot of marketing, right? We take the 10X approach when it comes down to it. We're out there handing out matches with stickers, right? When the calls are dead and nobody's calling us, because it's not every hour that people are getting arrested, we're making sure that everybody knows our name, right? In that division, that county, so that when the time comes, like these people needed help, they know who to call. And it's just so coincident that coincidentally, this kid got arrested for drinking and driving, went over to the golf course to play a little golf. And on his way back, he ended up going ahead and getting into a fender bender and cut his head, hit his head on the wheel. He went to jail for a $100,000 bond for grave bodily injury. You can retain counsel, right? An attorney. But the attorney's not going to be able to get you out of jail. They're going to be able to represent you. That's where the other side of the coin comes in with getting the best results for your case. They retained an attorney, and we're very well known within the community. Not only did the attorney already tell them, hey, go with these guys. They said, oh yeah, we called them already. We already know them. They're actually next door. They're famous in East County because of all the marketing they do. We got him out. We gave him the loan of $100,000, and we made it very simple for the parents because they had called around, and actually they didn't. The aunt did, right? Family members take it upon themselves to go ahead and call other people, and you get into this competitive industry now, right? Sister-in-law went ahead and thought she could do better, so she called such and such place, and they overpriced them. Then they call us, and the other company was charging them a full 10% versus us. We were able to get them qualified for 6%. So it was $6,000 in exchange for $100,000 in a check, a bond, essentially. The kid got out. We knew he wasn't going to run. Family ended up going ahead and paying it. They thought it was a very attractive option for them. The other company was offering an ankle monitor. They said, that's a lot of money. You know, this kid's, he's a loose cannon. You know, they're judging by the way they look, by the way the defendant looks. That's not it. My job, and I take it very seriously, is to be able to prove to the insurance company, right, the underwriters, that the person represented on paper is not the person represented in real life, right? Yeah,
So let's talk about your background. Where were you born? Where are your parents from? What's your nationality? What's your ethnicity?
So I had a very humble beginning, right? You see here the guy in a suit, which I'm used to wearing suits every day, but that's not me, right? I started off in San Diego. That's where I was born. I was born in Chula Vista. My whole family's from Mexico. I started off in a private Catholic school where, you know, my parents could barely afford it, but they wanted to make sure I had the best education possible. For me, it wasn't, I was that hustler from the very beginning, right? I had that goal setter mentality. A lot of the teachers would tell me, you know, oh, this kid's got ADD. He's got to have Adderall in there to keep him calm. Really what I was doing is I didn't, you know, what they were telling me, not only did I already know what they were telling me, right? Because my grandfather had taught me a lot. He was a teacher himself, but I wanted to go ahead, and for me, it was making deals. I was always very attractive to me. I'd start off going ahead and I was telling my daughter this the other day. She's 14 now. You know, when I was a kid, I would go ahead and kids would have lunches they didn't like. There was a KFC that had just opened up in the 90s across the street. So it says, hey, I made a deal. I'll make a deal with you. You go ahead and bring me your allowance, and I'll charge you whatever it is I'm going to charge you. And I also get to keep your lunch, right? And I'll go outside of the school grounds, get you KFC, and I was risking a lot. There was liability involved in there, right? Getting caught by the nuns. I was actually one of the last schools that had nuns. And, you know, I would take the risk. I'd go on there and I'd charge them a high fee. And in the end, I'd have 7, 8 lunch boxes I could choose from, whatever I wanted, right? And it was deal making. So I started off young, very humble beginning. Like I said, I used to, you know, walk from school to from my house, and there'd be drug dealers. I'd be, hey kid, you know, take this little package here and there. I was a kid, I didn't know. But I started getting those street senses, those street smarts.
So you've been a driver. I can tell by your personality that you're a high driver. So that's what it takes in most cases for an entrepreneur to be successful. It's part of the personality traits.
Yep.
When you started your business, what year was it? How challenging was it? And what did that look like?
So that's where I was leading off into. So when I started off my business, I believe it was around 2016, 2015, right? I started going ahead and making sure that I could do the job first and foremost. I had to, have a conversation with myself in the mirror and say, you've been an employee. You have an employee mindset for right now. You need to elevate yourself and you need to do research and you need to go ahead and branch out and see what it takes to be a business owner. And I saw myself in the mirror and I said, I can do this. So I went ahead and I started off in the industry very young. I worked at every major bail agency I could, and I learned their craft. And I learned sales. I was in sales. I learned sales.
Was that the hardest part?
You know what? No, the hardest part for me was capturing the fugitives. Because like I said, when you go ahead, I started off at the bottom, capturing these guys, it's a lot of hours, stakeouts, right? A bunch of stuff you don't want to do.
The bounty hunter.
Essentially, right? But in real life, the real dog, the bounty hunter, right? El perrito, the dog, the hunter. But I learned the sales job and, it made sense to me. So I learned what they did wrong. And a lot of the things that bail bonds do wrong is they don't have customer service. You have the stereotype, right, that goes into it with the guy with the pinky ring and sitting with a cigar at his table, suspenders and all that, saying, hey, you got the money or not? We got to adapt. You want to grow a business, you have to be able to bring a certain characteristic to the table, which is customer service, first and foremost. Right? You can go ahead and get 1 billion calls a day, but if you can't capture that audience, that client, and make sure they know that they can trust you by doing good, clean business, that's where most of these businesses fail. And it's not just bail; it's multiple businesses throughout the U.S.
Building a relationship,
right?
So, it's the same thing with your team. So, what year did you open, and how did you build a team? Like when you got started. Was it just you? Did you immediately hire a few people? What were those roles?
So I started off, like I said, myself, just one guy. And after I learned what the pros and cons were, I said, well, how am I going to go ahead and make money? This is around 2015, 2016, like I said.
You need a special license for that, right?
You need a special license to become a bail bondsman, right? It's kind of similar to the bar test. It's a lot of insurance code mixed in with a lot of laws, right, that you have to know. And it's I'll tell you this much. I'm not a test taker. A lot of guys pass it on the first time around. It took me 3 tries to go ahead and get it done.
So it's harder than the driver's license test?
It's harder than the driver's license test, man. And, there's a lot of studying. And for a guy like myself, it was tough. I was an underdog in the industry. I said, okay, well, I have an X amount of money. I started off, by the way, with $50,000 in my pocket that I had saved up. From the moment I started doing the sales, the back end, the desk job at all these other mom and pops and corporate companies, I saved up $50,000. I was never a party kind of guy, right? I always was a business oriented, kind of individual.
That's funny because you look like a party type of guy.
Well, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but
both.
Okay, there you go. I'll take it. But in the end, I said, how am I going to get these clients? And everybody loves this part. He says, well, I need a 9-to-5 job to pay my bills. And I'm not going to be going ahead and just taking all the money that I get from bail and just spending it. Yeah. So I said, what am I going to do? I got 2 jobs. I was a martial artist in the beginning. I was doing illegal pro fights back in the desert, making $2,000-$3,000 every other month, which is tough, especially having a newborn. And I says, well, the only thing I know how to do is, I got a license, I can drive, I can do Uber, and I can go ahead and teach kickboxing. So I did those 2 things. Kickboxing was a little challenging. I'll tell you that story a little bit later. But Uber was great because I wrapped my car, and you'll see it. We have multiple vehicles. Every employee that works with us, their car is wrapped with Abel's bail bonds because it's marketing. It's that 10X approach. And we also have fleet vehicles that go ahead and give rides to people, free rides, right, that you basically just receive tips on it. So, and we have pedicabs as well with our marketing logo all over San Diego. We have a bunch of stuff. But when I started it, it was just one car. And I had cheap little Office Depot cards I made. I didn't have money, right? So I drive around all day. I'd answer bail calls. I'd wear my suit, right? I'd look presentable.
How did you get those bail calls?
So I would go ahead and it was just word of mouth because in the beginning, there was no SEO work. There was no search engine optimization behind it, right? My site wasn't live on Google. And I had to compete against these big competitors. And I said, these guys, they realize so much. They're sitting fat and making money. They're not used to somebody like me, right? There's always going to be somebody hungrier climbing to the top, making sure that you get taken out. And that was myself.
But you started off as one person, and then your marketing was just
Word of mouth.
business cards, word of mouth.
Every time somebody would go ahead and get in an Uber, I'd hand them a card and I'd give them a pitch, and I would practice my pitches, right? I'd practice my sales. Look, I'm a young entrepreneur, and I'd walk them through the whole thing. I started off here, give them my life story, kind of like I am with you. And it was very tough. God, I must have been 26, 25. And I started off, giving them the cards, and it was the toughest.
So, dude, most people, number one, they don't have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
They don't have the patience to do that. And quite frankly, 99.99% of the world does not have the hustle to do that.
Well, and it would be tough because I would find they'd lead me on and they'd gas me up, right? And then I'd drop them off and I'd go clean my car because I was very anal about making sure everything is presentable. And I'd find my cards ripped up in the back. And I'd say, you know what? That's where I started developing a shell, right? That hard set mentality where I started telling myself it's all about the losses. The more you want to go ahead and advance in business, and I'll tell every single one of you guys watching this, if you want to own a business and you want to have that 10x lifestyle and you want to get to that next level, get used to losing, okay? The more losses you make, now you know where to step. It's like chess, right? Not checkers. You've heard that expression before. You want to be able to make sure, hey, you know what? I got my pawn eaten here. Okay, now I know that's not the route. Now I got to use my bishop. I got to get creative now on what it is that I'm going to go ahead and do. And after so many losses, you now have this roadmap of where you can go, and it gives you thick skin, right? It makes you a Spartan.
John Maxwell is the #1 best-selling author of nonfiction books in the world. He teaches leadership. And one thing I learned from him is fail quickly.
Right.
So fail fast. Get a return on investment from your failure because you paid for it. Make adjustments, optimize, and re-enter.
Absolutely.
If you do that over and over and over, eventually, you're going to master something.
Right. So that's very true. No matter what you do, you have to get used to going ahead and making sure that you can have that thick skin and you can advance. People who go ahead and, pardon my language here, but their pussies hurt in a sense where they lose that motivation because they didn't get a sale and, oh, what am I going to do? They start crying at home to their wives and all that. I take it as a learning experience. Make sure you learn how to go ahead and cater to that customer the next time somebody else like that calls, because not every customer is the same. And you got to get used to that in business. You got to make sure that every war, just like Sun Tzu says, and just like Marcus Aurelius, I'm a big fan of him, not every war is fought the same. And that applies to all of your customers. You want to advance, you want to provide the best customer service possible, you have to know how to adapt, be a chameleon. So,
Well, what education do you have? Do you have any formal education? Self-education.
It's all self-taught. I like to consider myself self-taught. I got kicked out of high school. I went to a charter school for fighting. Back in the day, I was fighting. I was 17 years old, lying to be 18. They didn't ID you just to get a couple fights in.
So you don't have formal education.
None. High school only.
Self-education do you have?
Everything from high school, from when I graduated early at that charter school, was self-taught. I didn't go to college. It was all life experiences. I was very lucky, and I will tell you guys this for everybody watching. Okay, if you want to own a business, and I'm sure you can back this up, look for mentors. Okay, that was the biggest thing. I had a lot of street mentors. I had a lot of corporate mentors. I had businessmen that I affiliated myself with. I never hung around people my age, and I was always that ostracized kind of individual in school. I hung out with males that were successful, and that's what I learned from them. I'd always ask them questions. I was always very curious, right? Hey, what do you think about this? How do you do this? How do you do that? Be inquisitive, right? That's how you're going to go ahead and evolve.
This is really good. That's why you're successful.
Thank you. And you know what? There's always room to improve and learn.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So, the brain, we only use about 10% of our brain.
Yeah.
So there's stuff that we know. There's stuff that we know that we don't know that we should be learning. And then there's everything else. So 97% of the stuff is stuff that we don't even know that we don't know that we should learn.
Right.
That's what makes us successful, wealthy, happy, and live well. And that's what I've learned, to just be open-minded. That's what open-minded means.
Right.
Be open-minded and curious. Dude, you hit the nail on the head with that word.
Thank you.
So when you got started, when did you start building your team? How fast,
right.
How long did it take you from when you started And then I want to talk a little bit about marketing, because that's really
so that was the other side of the coin. And so when I started doing the Uber thing and I started doing kickboxing, I was a small time guy. You know, I wasn't thinking of the future. I was just thinking in the now and how to survive, how to provide for my family, because I knew it was going to be a long journey. So I started, I got called in. I went in to do a kickboxing at this place, and actually I'm always listening, right? Even yourself, whenever you're talking, whenever I see your podcast, I look out for lines, right? Things that I pick up. And I picked up a lot of stuff in sales from this one individual at this kickboxing place. It was a women's kickboxing. I thought it was going to be real martial arts. Well, I found a fighter that used to fight with me back in the day, and he was my first employee. It was just out of Wolf of Wall Street. Nobody's going to believe this, but I put this on everything, my business. This is how it happened. I'm getting a call, right? I'm teaching class, and I get a call, and I'm an employee working, 9 to 5 type deal, and it's a bail call. It was a $50,000 bond, and they picked the 10%. They had the full $5,000, and I told my manager, I says, hey, listen, I gotta go. I got a $50,000 bond. They just paid me $5,000. I gotta leave. What do you mean you got to leave? I go, yeah, I got to leave. You can fire me if you want, but I got to go ahead, and this is my business. He goes, straight out of Wolf of Wall Street, you show me that you just made $5,000, I'll quit my job and go work for you. Because it took me 15 minutes to go ahead and do the deal outside. I said, all right. I pulled up. I had Clover at the time. I pulled it up on my phone, and I showed him. I go, look, he went ahead that same hour, quit his job, and he came with me. That was my first employee. That's my strongest, longest, right, employee that I've had. And he's still now, to this day, I says, look, stick with me, and I'll make sure that you're just as successful as I am, right? Trust in me. And I took a real estate approach, because I was big on real estate, always asking real estate agents, I even took a test for the real estate, and that's where I got it out of, actually, was I saw about franchise. So I says, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and franchise my company, and I'm going to give people the opportunity to own a piece of which has never been done in bail before. Everybody in bail, when there's a lot of money involved, right? It's a lucrative industry. People like to go ahead and hog it all, right? They like to spend the vacations. No, for me, it's all about reinvesting. But not only reinvesting in the company, the cause, right? The family, reinvesting in that person that is taking a risk on you, right? Because they're following you, right? So he agreed to it. He went ahead, and there's 2 ways of getting into my company: sweat equity and buying in, right? You go ahead and buy in for a percentage, just like any other McDonald's, franchise or whatever. And people, to my surprise, I didn't know how it was going to work. People have been loyal, because at the end of the day, you're teaching people that are also like-minded, like you maybe don't have a college education, to survive and provide for their families. And there's a very huge reward in that, right? Being able to go ahead and teach somebody, just like yourself, with all these employees that you showed me, this, huge company you've created, just like myself, from one guy. And to be able to be that fig tree that branches off good figs, right? That gives off good knowledge, stoicism, all these life lessons to survive, it's good. You bear good fruit. So now we have about 17 employees in Southern California. We're still growing. We're not as big as most companies, but we give a lot of companies a big run for their money, because the way we handle things, okay, we might be a small group, but our marketing is top tier. I got to learn from Grant Cardone, right? From yourself, the 10X method. I was a big bookworm. Tim Ferriss's 48-hour work week. A lot of that stuff, I just absorbed all the knowledge. And we went ahead and we give everybody a run for the money by doing not only the customer service that goes into reviews, right, which I was mentioning to you earlier. When you go ahead and somebody looks you up, you're a dime a dozen. There's a bunch of other bail agencies, as you know. They're all selling the same thing, right? They're like at the border, the linea. Hey, come here. We got a blanket over here. You got like 10 other guys going ahead and showing you the same tiger blanket. Well, I'm going to pick the guy that makes me laugh, that I can have that rapport with. So customer service, Google, online platforms, taking advantage of every social media platform possible to engage with customers, and making sure that they know you stand apart from everybody, because you truly care about the individual and look at them not just as a number, but as family.
Sales and marketing, it sounds to me, is the key to your success. That's your foundation, that's your groundwork, and that's what got you to where you're at.
Yep.
And developing your team. You mentioned to me earlier that, the ones that shine as leaders, you potentially make them partners and give them that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And also that you care about their goals. We do the same thing here. we focus on their personal, professional, financial goals. That's something that my greatest mentor, Brandon Dawson, taught me, is holding them accountable. Because if they're moving towards their goals and they're accomplishing their goals, and it's because you're helping them, the loyalty and that bond that you have is unbreakable, and they'll help you accomplish not only your goals as the owner, but also the organization and business's goals.
Absolutely.
Talk about how you align your goals with your teams and how you care about them.
Absolutely. So you got to take care of your troops, right? You got to go ahead and make sure that they have everything needed to succeed, as well as to provide for their families. So I like to give a lot of on-hands training. And a lot of agencies don't do that. I was thrown into the mix, and it was a sink or swim for the first agency I worked with. Big agency. I won't go ahead and say their name. They were number one back in the day, and they slowly started degrading, and they started going ahead and losing their touch because of the way they treated employees. I learned that from the mom and pop shop versus the corporate, right? Somebody who cared, which was a great mentor of mine, still around to this day. Which, by the way, I got to call him next week. Remind me. And I'll make the introduction so you could see as well. But you treat people well, you train them, you give them hands-on training, you get to know, like you said, their goals. I asked in a whole meeting, we have a war room, right? I call it the war table. And every week we get together, and I have now people, instead of it doing myself, I now have people that go ahead sometimes and fill in for me. And they give, kind of like in real estate where you have the exercise where before you go ahead and get on shift, you go over call, one-on-one calls. We call it the ring method, right? Where we go ahead and we pretend we're a client and we're giving you all these tough scenarios, and you got to navigate your way through it.
Role playing. Grant and his office in Cardone Ventures, they call it practicing on each other, not on a customer. So it's role playing.
There you go.
Training. So one thing that I noticed interesting with you, and it becomes clear to me more and more as we talk, is you do everything to operate like a mom and pop shop at a corporate level.
Yes.
That's the key to our success. That's the secret that nobody knows in business. So we're giving them away, the secret sauce right now.
Yes. And you know what? It's not even necessarily the secret sauce because, I could tell you how I do things. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to really have that patience, that character to go ahead and actually do it, care for one another. You could be this kind of guy that's selfish, right? And say, okay, I'm going to take that model and do it myself. But if you really don't have that need to help people out like I do for my employees, because they're family to me, right? You're never going to be able to be successful or do the same thing I do, right? It's all about how far you're willing to go for that customer, that employee, right? That business partner, that family member. So again, I think that's the number one thing.
Awesome, dude. You said that in your industry, this blew my mind when you told me that you're not able to do paid digital marketing, meaning that you cannot do paid Google ads, you cannot pay Meta, Facebook, Instagram to promote. How the fuck do you promote?
Well, that's a good question. And for me, it's all organic search engine optimization. I went through a lot of SEOs, and I'm sure you're familiar with that. People that go ahead and, optimize your listing to go ahead and stand out, right? Real estate agents do a lot of pay by click. For those of you who don't know, you pay a certain amount and you get sponsored at the very top. So when you call, people find you. Yeah, I didn't have that money in the beginning. In the beginning, they didn't have that. They still had that. Later on, as bail reform progressed and, people that such as Google, Mark Zuckerberg, the Lauren Arnold Foundation, they wanted to go ahead and create this algorithm that would essentially eliminate bail bondsmen altogether. And they would go ahead and start dictating who gets out. The algorithm would, right? The problem with that is that the algorithm doesn't know how to build a rapport with the mom that made a mistake, right? It just says, nope, been arrested twice, not getting out. Or doesn't have the money, nope, not getting out. Versus the bail bondsman that actually takes the time to get to know the individual. So I taught myself, I went through a bunch of SEOs, and believe it or not, just like any other industry, there's good SEOs and there's bad SEOs. I started with the bad SEOs, right? They started doing a lot of black hat stuff, this and that. And I like to keep business genuine because I genuinely think that's how you advance. And I got ripped off, 3 months into the whole thing. You don't know what you're talking about. Code this, code that. So I actually taught myself SEO, search engine optimization. I took a class and it says, just like a lot of my mentors, it says, look, you're always going to be in a room full of competition. If you don't know how to go ahead and market out or talk the language of the person that you're delegating business to, you're already behind the eight ball. So I needed to go ahead and, communicate to my SEOs, this is what I need. You're wasting time on this. This is what we need to do. And
search engine optimization, for those people that don't know what it is. So that's when somebody Googles your business and organically you pop up first.
Right.
That's what search engine optimization is. You can pop up if they put, for example, debt collection agency, and I'm located in Ontario and they're located in Upland, which is the city next door. I should pop up first because my SEO should be the strongest of any debt collection agency. And that's what Abel's referring to in his industry.
Right.
I'm assuming that he has the strongest SEO in the bail bonds industry in San Diego because this is the biggest bail bond player in San Diego.
In the state, actually. And I'm going to correct you on that because I go ahead and I have multiple offices. Again, we only have brick and mortars in Southern California, and we have other offices and other independent contractors that do, statewide and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you don't know, if you pop up, let's say top ranked, but you don't have that rapport within that community, right? That marketing angle, that advantageous angle to where people are going to trust you, that reputation. And it goes far beyond SEO to go ahead and get clients like we were talking about earlier. You have to understand and work with everybody in your field. You have attorneys, right? You have judges. I mean, I go to a lot of marketing balls, right? With the DAs and the judges, and I like to shake hands and, kiss babies' foreheads, so to speak, making sure everybody knows the name because at the end of the day, they're within the same industry as you. So you can't just limit yourself to SEO and rely on the phone to ring because otherwise you're going to be sitting there and twiddling your thumbs, trying to go ahead and just rely on that marketing because people catch on. And one day you're number one, next day you're number two. It's SEO is a very volatile thing, right? Overall. So not only do I get customers because of SEO, good, clean, non-spammy SEO, but through the marketing, the 10x value that goes into it. Like I said, billboards. Don't go ahead and Grant Cardone's very big on this as well as you are too. Don't go out there and start wasting money like these other bail agencies do. I've seen a lot of guys, they come up in the game for about a year and those companies come and go. I know a lot of them. They buy Rolexes. They're taking vacations. I see on their on their social media, they take vacations. I haven't taken a vacation and since probably the beginning of when I started Bail before the company, because I understand that you have to reinvest not only your time, okay? You have to miss birthdays, funerals, a lot of family events, but you have to reinvest your money, right? Into what's going to get everybody to know you, right? Even if it's bad publicity, the fact that people know you, that's good because not everybody's going to like you. Let's face it, Michael, right? At the end of the day, you have those critics that you can't convince, right? You have the Laura and Arnold Foundation that's going ahead and putting up, political ads saying, oh, bail is bad because the bail bondsmen are sitting there getting rich. Well, no, it's the fact that we know how to get to know the individual and we're the only ones. An algorithm is not going to go ahead and apprehend a fugitive in Mexico, right? You got to go through networks, through the comandantes. You got to go through the consulate, then do a bunch of stuff.
Promotes as the best known always beats the best.
Right.
So you don't have to be the best bail bonds company, but you better be the best known. And it's the same with any industry. That's why marketing is superior to sales.
Exactly.
So, dude, look, what's next for you and your organization? What's next for Abel's Bail Bonds?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Michael, because one of my long-term goals in the beginning was to become nationwide, right? Have a bail bonds agency in every state because people don't always just get arrested in California, as we know. You got Florida, you got Nevada. But eventually it started evolving to, well, bail bondsmen are sort of looked as the dealers, right? They deal out the money, right? You need money to get out of jail. They'll go ahead and get you approved and they give you the loan. I'd rather be the supplier that regulates the bail industry to where now I can really make a difference within the industry and make sure that not only are people getting the proper help, but bail bondsmen are doing what they need to do to adhere a moral code of ethics.
So I see it the way you explained it as the bail agents are like the brokers for the insurance companies. Right. So how do you become the insurance company?
Well, if you want to become an insurance company, you have to have money. First and foremost, I believe the lowest you'd start off is with $1 million, right? You go ahead and you become and this was back in the day. I have to do my research again. I think it's gone up now with inflation and everything. But let's say you have $1 million and you can go ahead and write up to $1 million. You can give out up to $1 million. Again, in this economy with all this criminal activity that's going on, it's not a lot of money. I'm talking way back, 10 years ago when I did this research.
Can you raise capital from investors?
You can. And that's one of the things that I started doing again is raising capital, bringing in people that want to go ahead and buy into the same dream I have, the same goals, right? Want to make money while at the same time helping people and get that group going. Because once you do that, and I have a couple people in mind that we've already reached out to, and we've been throughout the years making deals, and I'm picking people from this department in the insurance company, people from collections even, right? Stuff like that can run a certain amount of departments, know what they're doing, are on the same goal as me, and we go ahead and maneuver all the other agencies around us because it's all about recruiting.
There's a lot of opportunity out there to raise capital for something like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of real estate people that are very successful, that have excess cash, that want to invest in my collection agency, buying debt portfolios. I'm launching an investment company as well to raise money to buy portfolios with my partner. So I have, a bunch
very
of friends
exciting.
that are big investors. They got a lot of big money in real estate, and they're like, I got a couple $100,000. Let's test it. And so you always need an investment thesis in every business as you scale.
Right.
So I want to talk about some synergies. The way I found the Bailbonds industry is a few years ago. We collect for some of the biggest debt buyers in the country. And one of my clients bought a big, massive debt portfolio that had Bailbonds accounts in it. So I'm not going to mention who the company that was selling off their old accounts to debt buyers was for confidentiality purposes, but we did very well with those accounts. We collected a lot of money. So this year, when I launched NPG Associates, this is the collection agency that I just launched to help small businesses. We talked earlier about what is a small business. A small business is anywhere from $1 million to $45 million. It can even be all the way up to $65 million. Anything above $65 million to $125 is considered mid-sized. So we launched NPG Associates to help some of these businesses, and we started, one of our first industries was Bailbonds this year.
Wow.
We've been doing very well with it. So as I'm getting more known in the industry, there's some synergies there. Now, your model is not really taking payments, right? So when somebody wants to get bailed out, you pretty much require that they pay the full 10% for the most part.
Not the full 10%. Let me correct you on that. So I like to go ahead and instead of, when I was a small guy, I didn't have time to do collections. And we're still, like you said, we're a small company, right? In that sense, right? Compared to larger standing companies that have been here since the 80s. But I charge a smaller percentage for an upfront cost. I give you essentially the option to go ahead and choose from. Do you want payment plans or do you want a paid in full at a lower rate with more prerequisites that go in it? Co-signers, family members. Depending on what you pick, that's where my collections kind of comes from, right? And we have a very high success rate with going ahead and having people pick paid in fulls in a sense, as we call them, PIFs. But
the same thing in collections.
Well, there you go. So, but the one reason why we're not reaching our fullest potential is because we're not able to go ahead and have a whole department, right? Kind of like what you're offering, to go ahead and expand and offer more leeways, more avenues for people to go ahead, and they don't have the money, right? They can have a better, a lower cost, right? Because later on they can go ahead and pay it. And it's like any business, right? People hear debt collections, they think, oh, that's bad. Why would this guy's going to come after me? No, it's not that. It's the fact that you're essentially investing time and paying a company that's doing a good job for you, but they also need to go ahead and operate, right? They need to go ahead and make sure that their employees, they're profitable. Otherwise, they're not going to grow and they're not going to be able to help out the people that need help.
Yeah. So the reason that we have success, and a lot of it comes, I call it the sweet spot. A lot of it comes from accounts that are between 2 years and 4 years old.
Okay.
Now, we typically collect after 6 months past due. That's typically when an agency like mine steps in, because the statistics, we ran statistics. It's in my executive briefing that I give to all my clients. Typically, after 6 months, the probability of you getting that account paid is very, 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 very low.
Right.
Unless you use an agency. So after 6 months, we reach out to them and we let them know this is going to be reporting to your credit as a negative collection account. And it stays there until they either pay it or the client, like you, would ask us to take it off. So between 6 months and 2 years is very collectible if an agency is calling. Between 2 years and 4 years, it's a sweet spot.
Okay.
It's a sweet spot because it's still within the statute of limitations. We can still sue them. So what we do in Bailbonds is we typically go after the co-signers between those 2 and 4 years. Number one, we put it on their credit report. So it's kind of like a slap in the face, waking them up. Hey, you have an account you haven't paid. You got to do something about this. The second thing is we start reviewing their account for litigation.
Okay.
So we start looking for assets to see if we sue them. So that's the synergy that we have in our collection agency with Bailbonds, and we're quickly becoming the industry leader as the #1 collection agency for Bailbonds.
Let me ask you this. How long have you guys been doing that?
So we've only started this year.
Okay.
Focusing on offering services to bail bonds companies, but we have way more experience collecting bail bonds accounts through some of these big debt buyers from bail bonds companies that have sold their charged off debt.
That makes sense.
So this is why I was excited to meet you. I see your presence, you have a strong social media presence, and I know that you're massively successful just because of all the trades that you've shared with us right now, the way you operate, the way you think, the way you lead, even down to your marketing strategies. That's unorthodox, but it's very effective. So
thank you.
You know, what I'm looking at in the future is Brandon Dawson is my greatest mentor. He preaches that collaboration is the new currency. So I think that there's lots of synergy there. You've done a great job with controlling your accounts receivables to not have delinquent accounts. I commend you for that. 80%, I've done the research, 80% of bail bonds are not in that same situation.
Right.
Most of them have a mess with their accounts receivables for numerous reasons that I talk about in our executive briefing. But I'm hoping that, you know, I can see you and witness your growth. I can see you, you know, realize all your dreams and your goals of having to be on the insurance side, right? To raising capital and building that company. And if there's anything that my agency can do to support you in those endeavors, we're at your service. And you know, same thing with maybe introducing me to more. You're an industry leader in bail bonds.
I am. I know a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah. So if you know, if you're able to present me to, you know, some of the biggest operators in the industry, I'd be in your debt, and I'm sure we can work something.
Well, you know, that's very kind of you, and I am very grateful at the fact that you're giving us this opportunity to collaborate. At the end of the day, you know, I see you just as myself, right? You're somebody that cares about the customer service, right? You're somebody that cares about the client. You're somebody that cares about the entrepreneur side of things. And without collections, what you're offering right now, without collections, a company can stay stagnant, right? And I truly feel that if you're willing to collaborate with me and make sure that we do good business, I think that's not only going to help my number scale, right? That's also going to help our clients have better deals, right? Lower rates when it comes down to it, because now we have a debt collection agency that we can charge lower on the front end. People who don't have enough money, right? And they can go ahead and now get on some type of payment plan where our liability as an entity remains low. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just giving them more options. And you know what? That's why I say that between 2 years and 4 years, it's a sweet spot.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Things happen, right? They might have some financial distress. We're giving them an opportunity to recover. We're giving them 6 months. From 6 months to 2 years, we're putting it on their credit report so they don't forget about it, but we don't start getting aggressive until between the 2 and 4 years. That's when we put our foot down on the ground and say, you know what, that's it. Enough is enough.
You said something very important to me too that stuck out to me. Is you said, or until the agency decides to remove it. So, you know, so I like to have a lot of leeway with my clients, right? I like to go ahead and, you know, if we're able to strike a deal with them, we collect a certain amount through you, for example. And if they're able to go ahead and collect a certain amount, we go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and take care of this person. Let's offer them a better rate, or let's lower it. It's not just a brick wall you're hitting. What you're offering is much more, and that's exciting, especially to a business owner like myself who's successful and always looking to go ahead and branch out and open up other avenues, not only for myself, for my captains, right, my franchisees, but for the clients as well.
Yep, exactly. In our industry, we call that a settlement. So I get this question all the time when people find out I own a collection agency. How do you calculate the settlements? How do you settle with these people? Well, it's easy. Okay, it depends on their situation. I always use this analogy. If we have an 80-year-old lady on her deathbed and she wants to pay $50 on a $5,000 balance, I'm going to take her $50 and I'm going to close the account.
Amazing.
Right?
Commendable.
If we have a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and he owes $50,000, he has assets, he's married to a chief operating officer of another Fortune 500 company, and they have, you know, millions of dollars in their bank account, I'm not budging. They're paying
Right.
the balance, and they're paying it today.
That's amazing.
So it just depends on the situation.
Absolutely. The variables that go into every case, and that's very important. Again, I've seen a lot of debt collection agencies where they don't think like you do though, right? They still charge the sweet old lady, the sweet old grandma that's on her deathbed the full amount. But see, you have what some people don't, and I like to consider myself as that same individual. You abide by a code of ethics, right? There's very few people nowadays that own businesses. They think they're just going to get rich by screwing people over. No, it's not about that. It's about helping the client, the individual, get to that road where they need to go, right? Raising their credit, getting off their debt, right? Off their collections,
Peace of mind.
everything. Yeah. So I commend you, and I am excited to go ahead and do business.
Dude, again, I want to thank you for joining us. I was super excited to have you here. And honestly, I had high expectations of our conversation, and you did not disappoint.
Thank you.
I think everybody watching would agree that this was very valuable. Me, that I collect, my companies collect for the Bailbonds industry, I learned stuff from you today. So thank you for that. And I'm excited. We should do a part 2.
I'm excited too. And if I can intervene and give the audience one last thing before we close out here. It's a very important life lesson to me, to everybody that is an entrepreneur starting off, right? I said already the fact that, if I could give one lesson in a sense, I always tell people, get used to losing. I'm going to share from my martial arts background, and I hold it very dear. I have it tattooed. I won't show you guys my tattoos, maybe part 2. Yeah. There's some tattoos I can't show, but it's a phrase that goes into 3 parts: no doubt, no fear, and no pain, right? The moment you go into a fight and you start to doubt yourself, you're already losing that mental war. If you start to doubt yourself in business, hey, this competitor's kind of big, I don't know if I can go ahead and go up against them. You're going to lose. It's a killer mentality like Mike Tyson that you have to have, right? That customato mindset. The second one is no fear, right? The moment you're fearful of losing, the moment you're fearful of the outcome, you're going to limit your abilities to win. And the third one, the most important one, is no pain. Doesn't matter how hard you get hit and you get down to the ground. It's about how many times you get up and keep fighting for that cause, for your family, for your employees, right? For that customer. You're not always going to go ahead and have everything, be an easy cakewalk. But if you get to know yourself and the amount of pressure you can deal with, right? A lot of people like to go ahead and criticize, for example, a lot of politicians, right? I won't name names, but a lot of people have been persecuted in the political game. But the one thing I admire about entrepreneurs in the political game is those people learn, good or bad, okay? They learn to live and get comfortable in the pressure zone.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Grover talks about it in his book, Relentless. It's resilience. So to be a successful business owner, you have to have a lot of resilience. And then that follows up with his next book, is winning. So if you're relentless, you're going to meet the spirit of winning. And that's what it's all about, dude. And thanks again.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm super excited. And let's keep the relationship going.
Absolutely.
So that these people can see what part 2 brings.
Great. Let's do it. Thank you one more time.
You,
Thank you.
Man. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope that this was very insightful. I hope that now you understand a little bit more about the bail bonds industry and even the debt collections world and how they're connected and what it takes, most importantly, to be a very successful 10X entrepreneur. Let's get it. And also make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe if you want to keep Mondays with Mike going strong.